Hello and welcome back to Contractor Evolution. I've been thinking about this question a lot lately. Why do so many contractors claim to thrive on chaos? Like, is there something about the entrepreneurial journey that attracts the tormented soul? Or is it the journey of small business itself that causes this discord inside us? I'm not sure I know the answer, but one thing that does seem abundantly clear is that if we don't tame the chaos within, it expresses itself, it even amplifies itself on the outside. Our frantic and reactive energy rubs off on the people we lead. Our scarcity mindset causes us to push and drive and sell at a rate that seemingly no one can keep up with. The incredibly high standard that we hold for ourselves and for our team, which on one hand helped us build the reputation we have, but on another hand, spiritually exhausts us as nothing and no one, ourselves included, is ever good enough. Okay, I'm being a little woo-woo here, so let me bring this down to a very practical level. Chaotic leadership doesn't scale. The obsessive, almost manic energy that you use to get the wheels in motion at the beginning is now turning away the high performers you need to build something truly sustainable. It's also, by the way, robbing you of the joy you thought you'd get by being self-employed and charting your own course. What's the point in material wealth if it costs us our spiritual health? If you're in a chapter of your growth where you're tired, like really tired, wondering why you started this thing in the first place, dealing with this ambient anxiety you can't quite put your finger on, or your personal relationships are suffering due to the demands of your business, this episode is for you. Jon DeWaal is the founder of Liminal Space, an organization dedicated to helping leaders thrive as they navigate the intensity of organizational, professional, and personal change. He's also the one-on-one coach to one of our co-founders, Danny Kerr, who insisted we have him on, and you'll see why. So without further ado, let's dive in with Jon DeWaal.
You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Jon, it's really good to see you, man. Welcome to Contractor Evolution.
I'm so grateful to be here. So good to spend the time with you, Benji. Thanks.
So we were kind of chatting offline, joking about this. There's a very common trope, a very common adage with entrepreneurs and contractors specifically. And they say it to me. They've said it to you hundreds, if not thousands of times. It's this bit where they go, Jon, I really thrive on risk. Yeah. What goes through your mind when you hear someone give you the "I thrive on risk" soundbite?
Well, immediately my gut feels suspect. I feel a sense of suspect, but curiosity, because maybe the way they're going to define it as we talk, it will be a story of thriving. But I would say most of the time it's not. So when I hear that, I just want to hear, like, how do you define thrive? And they'll start telling me stories about this thing they started, this business venture they got going, all of the success that came out of that, the 3 or 4 other things that they started, and the things they bought and the risks they took to do that. And it just keeps going. But then when they start, teasing out a few more details, like, yeah, I really stressed out my wife or my spouse. And, you hear these little data points and you realize, like, well, it sounds like one part of your life, a very small part of your life, might be thriving, but it doesn't sound like it's true for the whole of your life. It feels rather chaotic. And the way that word begins to actually show up as they talk about thriving, we begin to shift to that word. Like, actually, that doesn't sound like thriving. I think it's misnamed. It's chaotic.
It's maybe just surviving, actually. And they've
totally,
yeah,
totally. And they've honed exceptional skills in the art of surviving, in the art of keeping things going.
This idea of like a chaos within, and that's actually not a terrible title. I mean, we might use that, is I think quite prevalent and quite widespread with contractors and small business owners, entrepreneurs, broadly speaking. There seems to be this chaos within them. Is that something that you see? How would you define that? What's your take on this idea of a chaos within?
I think it has to do with the energies of anxiety, fear, insecurity, a scarcity mindset. With that, some of the emotions that might be really rough, anger, even rage. There's some arrogance, perhaps, a blind ambition. It's all of those energies. And I think the key phrase is they've gone rogue or unchecked. They're unexamined. They're the energies that are writing the pen. They're holding the pen to the story, and not the individual conscious of how all of that's being written out as the story unfolds for the day, for the week, the year, the thing they're creating. And all of that without any consciousness, that's what yields the chaos inside. I think it's impossible to eradicate those energies. What is possible is to bring awareness to them, to bring understanding to them, to know how they're fueling our actions and our behaviors. And if we don't, those things end up undermining what we want to create. They serve in many ways like a thief. They steal away the potential of what could be. Decisions feel more like you're operating like you're in a life raft, not on a ship. You're doing survival activities. You're reacting like you're in a survival story rather than a ship that's actually designed for rough waters. You might actually be a pirate and not actually a captain. You might actually have decisions that are rooted in a scarcity mindset and not something that has more of a foundational, solid, confident, we're going to get through this together as we man this ship together.
As you talk about this, I find myself wondering, like, and I'll just think through this out loud, like, are people with a chaotic interior world, a chaotic soul, if you want to call it, a chaotic inner lived experience, are they attracted to entrepreneurship, or is entrepreneurship a free for all, and it's the being the business owner, being the leader that creates the chaos within? It's a bit of a catch-22, and maybe it's a bit of both. But that's what I'm wondering. It's like, are most entrepreneurs just have this, highly motivated, highly driven, super capable, but also kind of inner landscape, or does the act of being in business create that within them?
I'll just speak from my experience. I think it's the experience of the container, that being a business owner, an entrepreneur, that provides them to take all that energy inside them, the DNA of who they are, their skills, their ambition, and apply that somewhere. Because they're probably not going to survive all that well when they're sitting at a desk and someone is telling them what to do. That's not my experience of most entrepreneurs. It's the freedom to move and to have the control that they're looking for in that particular environment.
So I think, do you talk about this with the people you work with, this idea of, like, you have some tremendous gifts and talents and God-given stuff that make you who you are, but with that package also comes this underbelly, now I don't want to get too esoteric and use too much woo-woo language, but you might call it the shadow self, whatever. It's like, hey, there's a lot of really good, you're highly creative, you're good at motivating people, you're a good problem solver, you're a persuasive speaker, so you can sell jobs and convince people to work for you. You've got hard work ethic, blah. So that's all good. But along with that comes this other, is that kind of how you frame it and how you talk about it with your clients?
Always. I think, you named it really well. We all have a shadow self. It doesn't matter who we are as human beings. There's just parts of us that are unfinished, right? And so during certain moments of our life, when we're willing to look at it, we're going to look at the glory, the goodness, the things that you bring to bear in your life, in your business, your family, relationships that are really, really good. And there's also stuff that yourself are undermining that. And both are important to know. Both are important to have an awareness of and actually do something about, because that's the beauty of being a human being. We have some choice here, right? We bring awareness to both things. We can choose how we want to engage when we stumble and fail and fall and, mess things up, whatever that looks like. And the same thing, we can engage also with our gifts and our strengths and how those get more nutrients to go further with.
We're going to talk about sort of how to limit the downside while maximizing the upside, because I think, we're going to have this conversation today, but with this whole genre of discussion, self-help, working with a counselor, working with a guide, whatever, I suspect that there's a fear with entrepreneurs about, I'm not really that interested in it because I don't want to lose. I think they're scared they're going to lose the good stuff also. So it's like, yeah, I could like go, but then I'll become soft. And then like that. So it's like, yeah, I'd be a better husband for my wife. I'd be a better wife for my husband or whatever, but my employees wouldn't respect me anymore. My business results would suffer. So, is that true? And maybe a two-part question, can you add on to it? Like, what are some of the downstream effects that you see when the downside, the shadow self kind of isn't tamed, isn't controlled?
Yeah. I mean, it's such that's a very, I feel that myself. Like if I'm going to be asked to grow in certain areas, what's the impact on these things that I'm keeping going the way that they're going? And will I have to give up more over there? Right. And that's that experience of either this or this is a false binary. It's rarely one or the other that we're being asked to choose or let go of, but it's that third way. There is a better way if we settle into that space a little bit longer, stretch it out a little bit more, seek to understand it. And none of the change, none of the growth that you may need to step into as a leader is going to happen quickly. It's going to take some time, a gradual conversation that's not going to nuke your life, but is going to ask you to bring awareness to some key areas where you have these beliefs that are guiding how you make choices, that chaos, right? The beliefs that are guiding the feelings and the thinking, and with that, the actions. We need to slow some of that down and understand it. You have to bring awareness to that and transform some of that. And it may actually show up in the way, eventually, how you strategize, the decisions you make as a business, what you choose to say yes to or no to, what people you bring on, what people you let go of. None of that's going to happen quickly, especially if the stakes are high.
What are some of the negative downstream effects that you see leaders suffer from, both on the business front and then on the personal life front, when they leave that chaos within completely untamed, completely untethered, not addressed for 10 years, 20 years, whatever? What actually happens?
Yeah, well, a lot of the clients I work with, when they show up at my office or online in front of me, they're experiencing a deep level of exhaustion. They're coming to terms with, I have built this thing, I have created this company, and there's something not working, and I don't know how to get my mind around it. And I don't really have many places to talk about this, both like I need to understand it, but it needs to change what I do, how I act. So most of them are at just this deep, like soul level exhaustion, and they need some care. They need some help. So that's so common.
What do you think they're so exhausted by?
It's one of the things that I think is just part of being a small business owner and entrepreneur is you are inundated day after day, month after month, year after year with change. You go through so many changes in the business cycle, with your clients, your customers, all those different external pressures that are happening, as well as the opportunities you're going after. It's constant. So for a small business owner, I think different than the normal guy who's got this job, working for this company, has to deal with change constantly. And so that has a shaping effect, right? Because you're constantly looking for what needs your attention over and over and over again. It's this amplified life of change and transition. So your mind is always looking for the external threats and opportunities that you have to respond to. Your mind and your activity is externally focused. And we forget that as human beings, the way we go through that happens also at an interior level. There's something happening in each of us as we face uncertainty. And that's what change is, right? Uncertainty is all that stuff that's happening around us settling inside of us in the form of various stress hormones. It's inevitable, right? We go through every day. That's going to happen. All of that lives inside us. And that's an important data point that a lot of leaders aren't paying attention to. They're not listening to what's going on the inside. At a very basic level, they might not have healthy habits. They're not exercising. They don't eat well. They may be going through something relationally that's bringing all this to bear, whether it's a divorce or conflict in their key relationship, a business partner. They just sense or know, like they know that something's not operating like it should. So I think the conditions of change and a lack of paying attention to all the effects of that have had a wear and tear on the small business owner. And it's finally catching up to them, the cumulative effect of all of that. So it's a chance to really slow down and pay attention to all that. And part of what yielded all of that is on some level not them who chose that. We live in a culture that's just guided by a lot of hustle, a lot of get her done energy, a lot of willfulness that really tackles the thing in front of you and thrives and celebrates the person who's going to work 70 or 80 hours a week to make it all work, right?
Yeah.
You actually look at individuals like that, and quite often they're not only do they operate that, it leaks into the business. All of their employees operate that way. Their families even look like that. When they go on vacations, it doesn't sound restful. These are adrenaline junkie vacations where there's just very little time, just going from one thing to the next, and not really settling into an experience of rest. Rarely sitting around a dinner table together enjoying a meal. It's just go, go, go.
Yeah.
So that kind of hustle, grinding culture really catches up with a person after a while. You can't maintain that for the entirety of your life. At least that's what most clients that I work with get to, that realization of, I don't want to keep doing this. This isn't working.
It's the visual that comes to mind is this massive, if you went to Chuck E. Cheese's as a kid, as I did, you go play whack-a-mole. But this is a 360-degree whack-a-mole with 6 levels. And the moles just come out faster and harder. And when you don't hit them, they shock you. It's just picture the most comical, insane type carnival game where at first there's a dopamine hit because you hit 1 or 2 or 3 in a row. And then by your 5,000th iteration of it, you're probably feeling pretty tired and I don't want to play this game anymore. Let's go do go-karts. But
totally.
so here's a question, because I don't think that I doubt, maybe I'm wrong, but I bet you when they come and sit down on the couch, Jon, they're not like, hey, Jon, I'm really dealing with some spiritual exhaustion as a result of blah, blah, blah. So what are they saying? What are the words? Hey, I'm tired. I'm stressed. I keep losing employees. My marriage is on the brink of divorce. What's the more symptomatic level of this?
Well, they've built something that now is running them, rather than they running their business and it's serving them. They are enslaved to it. I'm thinking about one client in particular who buys and sells commercial buildings, and there's something in that he's really gifted at. He's exceptionally good at doing that work, and he's attracted this group of very loyal employees that would take a bullet for him. They just love him and he loves them. And yet the entire culture is just being run ragged by purchase after purchase and all the things that come with each building and all of the stuff that lands on everybody's plate and desk. And this level of chaos within the leader who feels like he can't say no because it's a good deal. Why would I say no to that? I gotta go after that. And it results in that spilling out into the entire team. And I think that's just an important thing for us as small business owners. If we don't really seek to understand what's driving and fueling the energy there, it'll transmit into the team. If it is not transformed in you, it will transmit into the team. They'll feel it. Your loved ones will feel it. Chaos spreads, right? So when I sit with someone and they are talking about what they've created, there's just an immense amount of pressure and they don't know how to get out from underneath it. They've created something that really, it is cool. It's good. There's profitability. There's good team members. There's beautiful outcomes with happy customers. There are good things there. But they've been focused so much on the thing that they're creating and trying to keep afloat and going and growing that there's something of a wasteland inside them, a hollowing out inside them that they know they can't continue, but don't know how to get out from it as well.
Right. Trapped.
It's a bind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to get to this. We're going to get to some really practical kind of like steps. And you've put together a list of just like baseline entry level, like do this for an immediate result type stuff. But I thought it would be interesting just to have a more nuanced understanding of the problem. Yeah. Can you take us through a list and expand on some of the most common patterns that you see in the leaders that you work with? Some of these, let's call them chaos patterns. What's the list? And then just, give us a paragraph on each one.
I like to use the word safety a lot with the leaders that I'm working with. It feels like a soft word to many of them, but it's a really important word for us to understand. So I think one of the first chaos myths in leadership that I see is safety is found when I get all the work done. Safety is found when I've checked all the boxes, my Asana looks clean, or whatever your task manager is. Safety is found when all the work is done. That simply on a basic body level is not true.
Okay, well, that's news to me. Sorry to cut you off, but when I have a big list on a Friday and it's usually a piece of paper, and there's 20 things on it. When I hit pen to paper and I cross off that last thing and I crumple it up and I put it in the bin, I do get some little hit of some, I don't know, maybe it's not the right neurochemical, but I'm definitely getting something. Are you saying that's not it?
I'm saying it's not enough. I feel the same thing too. But why is it when more often than not, when I've done that, and I've seen other leaders do this all the time, that evening, that weekend, they're on edge and something happens and they blow up at one of their kids or their spouse, and they're edgy. They're just edgy, or there's a restlessness there. There's an agitation there. There's a buildup within them that has not been released. That's happened on a daily basis or a week. It just happens in their life. And that to me is a good data point that there is a buildup of something within them physiologically that needs to be released. So most leaders don't know how to speak the language of their body. Mm-hmm. They don't know, even as I ask them, tell me what you are physically feeling. Tell me what your emotions are right now as you talk about what the word thriving looks like to you. Mm-hmm. There's a lack of language to describe that, because it's go, 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 task, 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 and in an attempt to feel safe and handle all the dangers that are going on around them, or seeking out all the opportunities that are going around them. So all that adrenaline, or like all that cortisol, all the stuff in our bodies that's coursing through our veins continues to operate at a certain level. And that's where that, I think I don't know enough about all this, but I think that's a lot of what's going on in that hustle mindset. And in our hustle culture, we're just really jacked up on all those stress hormones that have been running like out of control, that we don't know how to bring our bodies down to a place of calm. And that is one of the basic skills as a human being that we need to learn. It's not indifferent. We're not that different from, the gazelle that outruns the cheetah and gets back to the herd. The first thing you'll see that gazelle do is shake its body. And there's something important happening in that moment. It's releasing all that stuff that's been built up from hauling to get away from that cheetah, right? To say, I'm safe. I can go back to managing the food intake, mating activities, you name it, right? That kind of stuff is happening. It's the same for us as human beings. We need to speak at the body level. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, okay, so I totally hear you. And when you describe it the way but throughout the weekend, like Saturday, you're still kind of on edge, even though the Asana dashboard is cleaned up and you hit the punch list and you got it done by 6 p.m. on a Friday and you went and had a beer, you're still like I can still be kind of a Saturday afternoon, right? Like that's me. That's my life.
Yeah.
So then what's the contractor's equivalent of the gazelle shaking their body? Like what's an actual practical thing that helps us bring that, so that Saturday through Sunday, I'm like the more organic Benji, not this like keyed up cortisol spiked Benji.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to some practices here in a little bit, but there's like literally thousands upon thousands of things you could choose. And you could do this throughout your day. For example, I work with clients. Some of them are like going through some really difficult stuff. I might watch something funny in between sessions on YouTube, through a comedian, Gaffigan, just to laugh.
Right.
Just to like have that energy inside me, like settling my body. In the evening, going for a walk, exercise, laughter and play with your kids or your spouse, playing some kind of sport. Often physical activity is one of the best ways to signal to our bodies that we can actually feel safe on the ground, here, now. And so learning, like, what is that for you? What is that for you? Could be just a good, nice, long hug when you walk through the door. And instead of your spouse or your partner saying, we've got this thing that we got to do right now, here, help. Like, just give me a hug. I need a hug.
The activity or the ritual or whatever, it sounds to me like is somewhat arbitrary. Although I'm, maybe physical exertion kind of helps because there's, something that happens, whatever. But the idea, so what the ritual is arbitrary. You can kind of make it your own. You can customize it to your lifestyle and your family dynamics and whatever. But I think the idea, the central idea or the myth you want to bust here is that getting it done, crossing the last thing off the list ain't it. It's actually something else. You need to add on to it.
Yeah. And when you're doing those things, you're actually speaking the language of your body. You're not telling your body, hey man, it's safe, just chill out. Like, no, you're doing something that physically is letting your body experience a level of safety, calm. You're going from a stress level of 8 down to a more manageable 4 or 5. Whatever that may be for you. The point is you're doing it and you're doing it consistently and it works for you. You're not doing it because you heard about this guru who's doing it. You're just, like cold baths, like that's a super popular thing
very
right
trending
now.
right now. It's very buzzy right now. Can everyone calm down on the cold plunges, please?
Please.
Sincerely. You're not going to hear it on this podcast. Good God.
But someone's
making
a big
guys.
buck off of
that.
that.
Oh my goodness.
But you're doing it and it works for you and you're doing it like your life depends upon it, because it does. The good life depends upon it.
What are some of these other chaos myths, chaos patterns?
Here's another one, a myopic understanding that the good life, the good business is centered around profitability. Profitability is one small metric of a successful business. And I get it. Like at the end of the day, if the business isn't making money, you're not in business and you can't feed all these lives, including yourself. And what about the metrics of time, energy, relational space to actually have friendships? I was talking to a business owner recently. He could literally not tell me one person that he would qualify as a friend. He has been working 70, 80-hour weeks for the last decade of his life. And this is a good man, worthy of good friendship. Very successful, financially speaking. That's a life. That's a story to me. That's not something I would want to seek after, and I think most of us don't. So expanding the metrics for success in your life, not just the metrics of profitability, I think is a huge part of doing something about the chaotic energy within you.
People are tunnel visioned on material success. They're tunnel visioned on the P&L of the business or the revenue or the growth of the team. I mean, we've on other podcasts discussed this idea of like vanity metrics versus sanity metrics, right? And so, revenue is a vanity metric. Profit is a sanity metric, we would say. Maybe there's others, but
Totally. How about the joy metric?
The joy. Okay, so that's where I was going to go with this. What's a practical step to help this client? Like, you just mentioned, good man, worthy of friendships, but is doing 70, 80 hours a week for however long. How do you expand the awareness to the many other slices of the pie that is life? If you looked at life as a pie, there would be, it would be cut up in a whole many different places. And you're saying most people are kind of just zoomed in on one. So what's the process to expand someone's awareness to the others?
Well, you gotta want a more expansive pie, right? You gotta want it first. And by bringing awareness to this conversation around friendship, there's this ache that he's beginning to speak to and talking about that. There's a loneliness there, a sense of desire for something. Great. Well, let's talk about the particularity of things that you enjoy doing, the things that you enjoy spending your time engaged in that perhaps are outside of work. He's a pilot. He owns a plane. Are you a part of any pilot clubs? No. Okay. Before we meet next, you got to come to me with a list of clubs that are specifically around flying, and you're going to reach out to them and see if there's any kind of meetings coming up. Because if we see all this stuff about your life and you don't do something with it, there will be no transformation. You will not change the story of success. It'll be the same rinse and repeat. So it asks each person, if you're going to do that, you've got to consider what it means to vulnerably lean into an insight, vulnerably choose something, try something that's different, new, right? That will yield more learning, more eye-opening, more like, oh, there's a bit more joy here. I like this. I like that person. I see something emerging here, or, that didn't go well. I got to try something else. It's all learning, right? And expanding that word success to have a richer story, a richer meaning attached to it.
If you were to take the myopic approach to success to its final conclusion, were it uninterrupted, what does that look like 40 years down the road?
Gaining the world and losing your soul.
Right.
It's having all of the money that you set out to build and get, and no one's there around your bed watching you die, holding your hand. That's the worst case scenario.
There's something interesting there, not to get too kind of like artsy fartsy here, but that is an archetypal character in literature and in philosophy. The miser, the Grinch, yep. the Scrooge. Like this is embedded into the very old stories and myths. It's biblical. It goes all the way back. We see it everywhere. So this is that outcome is A, bad, but B, been known as bad for at least a couple thousand years. Because we're talking about it and writing about it as something you want to avoid. What are some of these?
It's not new knowledge.
It's not new. What are some of these? Although I will say the environment is new and the mechanisms needed to actually avoid that are new, and we'll get to that in a second. Any other kind of chaos patterns you want to hit here before we get to some of the rituals and practices?
I see a lot of people overusing a strength or a skill, and by doing so, it becomes a liability.
Okay.
So, for example, worked with a contractor, a business owner, started a business 7-8 years ago, super successful here in the Pacific Northwest, makes a lot of great money. And if you experience this guy, you get why. He's super professional. You just how as people, as they talk, they just ooze professionalism. You just know the conversation is going to stay here. It's going to be all about business, trends, what's going on in the market, things you're doing in your business, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff. Exceptionally professional. Everyone on his team knows it, and no one on his team trusts him.
Interesting.
So he is skilled. He has built he's got a sharp mind for business. He did it really quickly, went from 0 to I think 30 or 40 million, if I remember correctly, in a span of 8 years. That's a good trend.
Yeah.
Right. So all of that being what it is a beautiful thing on one level. And yet, when you look at his life, it's an overused strength, that business mind, that has pushed people away from him. And most don't want much to do with him from a relationship standpoint.
Why?
Most of the
what you know, there's confidential stuff obviously you can't share, but like
Yeah.
I think you can probably speak about the patterns. Like is it the fact that he's polished that makes people distrust him, or is it something else?
It's part of it, but it's that sense of like, this guy's not operating like a human being. Like, where is the personal side of who you are that begins to show up?
Right.
Because when we're working for someone, when we're part of something, we want to feel like we can show up as whole people. And if the guy in charge or the gal in charge is not a whole person or trying to lead in a whole way, it's not creating safety for others to do the same. Mm-hmm. And so everyone on his team had this generalized like distrust of getting close to him. I'm not going to show you my humanity because you're not showing me any of yours. So that's really hard to trust.
It's like he's like a video game character entrepreneur, or like a like a business owner. He's a business robot. Like it's so calculated, it's so measured, it's cognitively so advanced, but he probably would never admit to making a mistake. He would not air out his dirty laundry, and as a result, people they feel like they're talking to an NPC, not an actual human being.
Right. Totally. That's exactly it. And so the experience of that over time, like here's an everyday example. You know, you're walking by someone's office, a guy like this, is he going to enjoy standing in someone's doorway that works for him and talking to them? Is he going to enjoy that 5, 10, 15 minutes to connect and see that as a valuable part of his day? No, it's going to be a waste of time. Mm-hmm. It's going to be I could be doing something else to make this thing more efficient and better. I could be handling those tasks that are on my plate right now. And we'll miss the opportunity to be seen and known himself and see that person as well and build the trust between the two of them. Like, we're human beings working together on this ship, handling and doing difficult things, creating this thing together. That's a beautiful thing. And for him, that's just a great example of an overused skill and an underused relational set of skills.
But the overused skill can take a million different forms, can it not? Like
totally.
So maybe just give us a couple other examples, like quick hits. Like you know what? And you know what this sort of reminds me of is that saying is, you know, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's like that's If you're a taskmaster, everything looks like a task. If you're a rapport builder, everything looks like a conversation waiting to be had. If you're a really good salesperson, everything looks like a persuasion conversation. You end up like overutilizing this thing, but then it backfires eventually.
Yep. Here's one that's more on the relational skill. The leader that loves to build collaboration. Really good at bringing people into the conversation again and again and again. And yet, like, sometimes you just got to make a decision. You don't have time to execute on collaboration. You just got to choose. And so does that mask an insecurity? Is that what that's about? There's something really good, right, about that, but sometimes you just got to choose the overuse of that strength. Or the leader who's got 1,000 ideas, right? They have folders in their computer with lots of ideas that they could just like really turn on at any moment and therefore take the business in a whole different direction and everyone along with it, right? I'm sure some of that might resonate for you.
Yeah, you got to beware of the ideas, guys. You got to approach with caution.
Right, but we love them too because like we're stuck. We need some ideas, some fresh thinking, like, or where is this all going? We need some seers who can help us get there and the ideas to go with it. Yeah, so that's another common one.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Overusing a skill.
Right. And so the awareness of that, and then how to utilize those skills for your benefit and the team's benefit, when to dial those down. What blind spots are there alongside those overused skills? Those are all questions to be examining in light of that chaotic pattern. Mm-hmm. And then all tied into this conversation is this ability to unlearn your story, unlearn the guiding beliefs within your story.
So now we sound really woo woo whenever the term unlearn comes up. I'm like, oh, here we go. So Make this make sense for for us, for like a blue collar audience? How does this idea of unlearning really impact or add value to the life of a business owner in this space?
Yeah, totally. Well, just the basic principle here is that beliefs and feelings drive thinking and action. That's one of my core biases and beliefs about how all of this works together. So where do those beliefs come from? They come from experiences, from narrative, from stories. You, client, or you individual, have a rather chaotic approach to your business choices. This client that had that I'm thinking of right now, when we explored it a little further, the underlying beliefs there, part of it was like, it'd be stupid not to buy this. Well, how did that come to be? You weren't born with that belief. Well, then he went on to tell me his relationship with his father. And not to, again, sound too therapeutic here, but there's a story there. And he's like, my dad was so conservative. He was so passive about how he spent money. He was always scared of taking risks. And when I would choose to take risk with something, he would look at me with this look of judgment and go like, why would you buy that? So every time he makes a purchase, he's seeing, oh, I'm doing this because I'm kind of giving the finger to my dad.
Right. That's what it's about for him.
Totally. So to unlearn, like bring awareness, there's a core narrative there guiding the story that I am just going to buy it because it'd be stupid not to. The unlearning is from that to, I'm going to make purchases that consider my own well-being and that of my teams, that's also guided by a strategy and a company that knows who it is.
Yeah.
Right? So that's deeper work. But if we as business owners and entrepreneurs don't do that kind of work, we're just changing the furniture in the room.
Right.
And the story, the transformation you're seeking and wanting has deeper work. There's deeper work there to do.
The thing is, like, beliefs are parked way back there, right? And so I've always found it really difficult to get there. And I think for a lot of people, sometimes there's like sometimes it's really obvious. Oh, had this horrific thing happen to me in my childhood, and that's made me this way. It's sort of like, and that's not to diminish the value of that, but it is fairly apparent. And then for other people, it's really not that obvious. Like you'd really have to work at it. And it sounds like 12 sessions with a counselor and a bunch of journaling to finally find the thing that's influencing the way, it's like if anyone watched has seen Inception, which almost everyone has, they need to go inside the dream, inside the dream, inside the dream. It's like, well, that's a lot. It's just like a lot of layers.
A lot of work.
That's a lot of layers. Have you found anything in your work that's just like really practical and really helpful? Questions that you ask, reflection exercise. I don't know. It's like something that helps people get to that stuff that's baked in way back there just a little bit faster, or at least start pointing them in the right direction.
Right. There's usually a story that needs to be told. There are stories that need to be told. So one of the things I'll do with a lot of leaders is tell me 2 or 3 stories where you struggled in your leadership. And I ask them to get granular, like take me into the soil of the story. When did it start? Who was there? What were you facing? What was the opportunity? Who said what? When was the moment of really big conflict, or was it a slow burn? Like really step into the stories and tell them. Because if we get into the particularity of the stories, we can then begin to hear some of the beliefs that were driving the behaviors. Well, why did you do that so quickly? Well, I felt like we didn't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time to slow down. Like, well, why did you lowball that customer? Because I was afraid that if I didn't, they would say no, and then we would be out of work. But wait a second, I thought you just told me in the story that you actually had 6 months of work booked. Mm-hmm. So you lowballed the price. Why? Like, as we keep unpacking the story and hear some of the guiding belief in that, the why might lead to like, I just don't think I'm worth it. And collectively, as a group of leaders on my team, we don't think we're worth it. And so we operate with a lot of lean, desperate, scarce energy in how we go about doing our lives and how we go about doing this work. So there's always a story, in my experience with leaders, that needs to be stepped into a little bit further to understand, like, how did it come about? Let's slow it down. Let's stretch it out and understand some of the why, the belief, the core motivation there that led to the outcome. And if you hear that across multiple stories, you have a pretty solid pattern.
Yeah.
And then you could go like, well, we can keep digging, or you can go do something different in the next moment that comes with leadership challenge. And we can talk about that and strategize and coach you through that. And boy, this would be a good set of data points to bring to a good counselor or therapist and dig a little further.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I find fascinating about what you just said is, like, I think in this North American kind of business thoughtosphere that we live in, there's a real emphasis and a real desire to be and a desire to appear outwardly as very logical, very cerebral, very rational. I mean, how many times are you going to hear a business guru say, you need to look at the data? And he's not wrong. You do. I'm not knocking that. I'm commenting on the fact that there's a real compulsion to sort of play that character, when in reality, sure, we're going to look at the spreadsheet, but we are also governed to a large extent by some of this like pre-programming that's built in. So this guy who has 6 months of work booked, that's the data says that he's still feeling the need to underbid something to get it into the production schedule and move on to the next thing. It's just interesting.
That's right. And then when you put all that, like, I said yes to this and lowered the price here, and you do that over and over and over again, what's that result in? A team that's overworked, reactive, plate's way too full. They're stressed out, just overwhelmed. They don't trust their leader because he's going to say yes to another thing. It's going to land on their plate and like create more anxiety and chaos. It just begins to spill out the toxicity. And that's a problem. So lasting change, you have to bring awareness to the deeper stuff that's informing the bad behavior.
We put together a Taming the Chaos starter pack, or you put this together. If any one of those patterns that we just went through, getting it done will make you feel safe, overusing a skill, a myopic understanding of success, I'm forgetting a couple. If any of those relate to you, if any of those resonate with you, this starter pack would be a good place to begin. Take us through. You've prepped this offline. I think there's some books. I think there's some reflection practices, a couple other things. Just take us through this as you see fit.
Yeah. So with all of these, as I share, I want to first state what I think are the goals of doing this. So it's to bring awareness first, to bring awareness to your brand of chaos, whatever that looks like for you inside. Bring awareness to that without judgment and self-condemnation, a lot of curiosity. So that's goal number one with all these things. Number two, to learn how to disrupt it, not to eradicate it. I think that's a foolish endeavor to try to eliminate all of these things. It's to bring awareness to it so that you can disrupt it with kind, sustainable practices. So that third, you create safety for yourself and those you are leading or sharing your life with. So a few books that I would recommend that are one's a oldie but a goodie, Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. They look at all the ways we are blind to ourselves, all the things that we don't, our blind spots at work and at home, and how those things sabotage what we want for ourselves, for the business we're creating, our team, all of it. Another book, Leaders Eat Last, Why Some Teams Pull Together and Others Don't, by Simon Sinek. This book's all about building trust, cooperation, self-esteem within the hull of the boat, if you will, that you're captaining. And when you do that with a group of people, create trust and cooperation, you can throw up a sail and go just about anywhere, go through just about any waters, right? So focuses on that. Third book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. What I love about this book is it is rooted in identity-based habits, creating identity-based habits. So if you want to become a less reactive leader, if you want to become more trustworthy and cooperative, like those kind of identity-based outcomes for who you be in the world, this would be a good book to step further into and bring some real practical energy to that. And then the fourth book is called Burnout: How to Complete the Stress Response Cycle. It's by two sisters, the Nagoski sisters. It's a book that they wrote for women. I love it when I recommend this book to a client and they're like, hey, I get an email. I just got one last week from a client like, hey, this was written for women. Are you sure you want me to read this? I'm like, yeah, I definitely want you to read it. I feel like it should be required reading for human beings, the first third especially. It really helps you learn to understand the language of the body and to begin practically speaking that language for yourself, whatever that may look like. Huge helpful resource for me personally, especially during the pandemic. So that's books. The self-reflection practice that I would want to encourage is rooted in this idea of the magic quarter second. We talked about this before the call. So for those of you who don't know what the magic quarter second is, in your brain, before you make a movement to go do something, whatever that may be, whatever you're going to eat for lunch, the cigarette you're going to smoke, the email you're going to send off to your partner, whoever it is, whatever it is, we don't become aware of our intentions for a quarter of a second. Before that action begins, we're not even aware of it, which brings into question free will a little bit.
Right.
We then have another quarter second before that action begins. So the beauty and the magic of that quarter second is if we learn how to become aware of what's going on in that space before the action begins, before whatever that may be, we actually become more powerful agents of our story. And by story, I mean the way we choose for our lives, our businesses, our relationships, what we're building and creating. It's a beautiful part of what distinguishes us as creatures here on this planet. So that's why I love reflection practices. It slows you down. It stretches out that magic quarter second. One that I love is called the Monk Manual, M-O-N-K, monkmanual.com. Check it out. It's all about integrating who do you want to be, who do you wish to become, and what doing activities support that. Most of my clients, this is required. Most of my clients do not have reflection practices in their life. This is a very simple exercise. It's only supposed to take 10, 15 minutes a day, but it pays back tremendously, especially if the priorities are really well dialed in. And then I've got a few body-focused rituals. So this first one is very short. It's called box breathing. Maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah, I've done it. It's good.
What I love about this is, again, it's a quick way to help your nervous system, your body, get to a more calm state. So I did it right before I came on this call, because it's like, these things are, it's game day. Like I want to be in my body. I want to be calm. I want to be grounded. I want to be in my thoughts. I want to have those thoughts available to me. So I did some box breathing, and all that is you breathe in on a 4 count, you hold your breath for 4 counts, you release that breath for 4, and then hold it again for 4 at the bottom. So it shapes a box, and you visually imagine yourself going around a box, breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and you just do that for 2 minutes. If you can make it for 5, even better. I recommend whole teams do this together, especially if they reach a point of conflict. Instead of everyone just like, F this, I'm done, walking away. Like, take a pause. Someone have the courage to say, hey, can we breathe together? Can we just take a breath together and walk everyone through an exercise? It will pay back tremendously for you and a team that learns how to do this together.
What does it do? What does it do for a leader, like someone doing it individually or a team doing it together? Like, can you maybe just give us, breathing exercises get talked about a lot. Give us sort of the practical outcome or benefit of doing that in the middle of an intense meeting or in the middle of a busy day.
When we see one thing rather narrowly, we miss the whole story. So an example recently, I got an email from someone that was really hot, and It was a personal email, all kinds of things in it that really triggered some anger and like just a flood of that energy inside me. And I know if I responded to that email in that moment, I would have made things worse. It would have been hot, just as hot back. And I knew all the ways I would do it. I drafted that email 6 times and I knew I could take them out. I chose not to. I chose to like, no, that's not what I want for this relationship. The same kind of thing within a business meeting. If everyone's seeing red or if the conflict's so high, you are not going to see the potential avenues towards a better story collectively. So you have to learn how for yourself, and you can do this without even anyone knowing in a meeting that you're doing it, because it only takes a minute or two. Literally, there's research that shows your heart rate, your blood pressure, the hormones that are about stress, they lower when you simply focus on your breath. And for many, it's like, what? I mean, is that going to really make a difference? Try it. Do it for a prolonged period of time. See how it impacts how you feel in your body during stressful meetings or at the end of a day.
It's interesting.
It
I
will
always
pay back.
The visual I always think of is like the gauge on. I'm gonna forget. There's a speedometer. There's an odometer. Then there's the one that shows you the rev count.
Yeah,
you know,
RPMs.
And RPMs. Well, that's the unit. But anyway? I'll look this up later.
I don't know.
The RPM-ometer, that one, there's all, depending on your car, it might go to 5,000, it might go to 8,000. If it's a diesel, it's going to be lower, but there is a range where it's red, and that they put it there and to show you, the driver, hey, you're running the vehicle too hot. You need to shift into a higher gear. You need to take your foot off the accelerator, whatever.
That's right.
I've always found that as a compelling visual, and I know I've started to. I'm not very good at it, but I've started to really pay attention to when my RPM-ometer emotionally gets into the red zone, and I'm like, I'm like, if I continue anything at this stage, it's going to make it worse. And I'll notice one thing. I'll notice like the email's a good example. Is like if I'm like on the keyboards, being like, bah, 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 you know what I mean, like doing like the keyboard warrior thing to like a coworker. It's like I'm literally like doing a Twitter fight with someone who I work with every day. I'm like, okay, this is a problem. Like I probably should just mark that as unread, set a timer. I'll come back to that in an hour and see how it goes. But I think go ahead.
And you actually probably achieve what you're trying to ultimately get to with the response. At least better than you would if you responded an hour earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing shows anger like a misspelled, half-baked Slack message to a coworker.
Totally.
Like this is
And in these moments, if someone would have asked me, like with that first email, I wanted to respond with like, hey, do you really want right now to become an
right.
Like truly, do you really want to become an right now? Like, of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. Like no one wakes up thinking, I'd really like to grow that part of myself today.
Right.
But it just happens.
Right.
And so let's like encourage practices that stretch out that quarter second, that allow us to be more grounded and calm in our bodies and in our thinking and in our choice making together. It'll pay back if we learn how to do that over time. So box breathing, the other practice, your daily start and your daily ending. What are the first 5 things that you do at the start of a day habitually without even thinking about it? Most of us, I'm guessing, reach for our phones, we check our feeds, we look at our email, we look at our calendars, and then the tasks and the to-dos and all that energy is off and running, right? Or it's like news feeds, distraction, or it's Facebook, distraction, right? It has very little to do with grounding us in a calm, confident, kind, connected individual who's about to meet the day, right? This is huge right now, I think, in our culture. The way we start and end a day matters. If you bring awareness to this, and over time, you're going to mess up. You're going to fail at this again and again, early on especially. But if you begin over time to identify, I'm going to do these 5 things. I'm going to eat well in the morning. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm going to use something else to wake me up in the morning. I'm not going to look at any technology for the first hour of my day. I'm going to read. I'm going to reflect. I'm going to have a conversation over a cup of coffee with my partner. Whatever it might be. I'm going to go for a run. I don't care what it is, as long as it brings you to a place of calm, confident, kind-heartedness, presence to help you meet and step into the activities of the day. And the same on the back end. so that you can leave that stuff behind and where it belongs in that day. Don't carry it into your sleep.
There's like a closing ceremonies for your day as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more than just brush your teeth. Like it's read a page of this book, or I pray, or I do. It's whatever. Like you can make it your own, can't you? Too
make it your own, right? Make it your own.
You know, this is interesting because this whole like morning ritual thing, I think, is sort of like the cold plunges has gotten a little out of hand. Like it's sort of become the morning ritual Olympics, where it's like, well, I actually get up 4 hours before my first meeting, and I read 2 books, and I run a marathon, and I do 5 guided. It's like, oh my God.
Right.
Okay. Right. So I get up and I have coffee, and I try to get some sunlight in my eyes. I'll have my athletic greens, and I usually read 10 pages. And I'll have a visit with April, and I'm like that. You know, that actually works for me.
Beautiful.
That's good enough.
Beautiful.
Like I'm not out there like doing the polar bear swim every single day.
Right.
So I guess what I'm asking
like,
is permission to like we can dial. I don't need to get stuck on the competition over who has the better, longer, who's getting up the earliest thing. It's like you can customize it to fit your lifestyle and your own rhythms, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because if your eyes are looking outside of you, like who's doing what and how can I replicate that?
Yeah,
you know, that's why cold plunging and everything is big right now. It's like, oh, it works for that person. They're super successful, or whatever. Like, not that stuff it might be good for you. You'd like choose that if that's going to be good for you.
But it's not a competition.
But, yeah, and what you just named is just beautiful. Like, what a beautiful way to start your day.
Yeah, that's good enough.
What a gentle invitation into the day.
Yeah, totally.
It's great.
I feel good when I do that. Okay, so those are the body focus ones. Box breathing, starting and ending your day. Any others?
Yeah, there's one that I would encourage you to do for the sake of your team, and it's called making safety. Again, this is a really, this could be an ethereal word if we don't like land it into something. I want for you as a small business owner, entrepreneur leader, to begin thinking about how can I show up with my humanity, my wholeheartedness, my vulnerability around the areas that are about my growth that I know will benefit on some level my team. So for example, I've got a client who sends emails way into the evening, and the feedback that he's received is like, we don't like getting those emails, puts pressure on us to keep working. We wish they would stop. It stresses me out. So with that data, having to go to his leadership team and saying like, hey, I know I'm the biggest offender when this happens. I know you all also do it. I'm changing this behavior for myself. I'm not sending emails to anyone after 6 p.m. I'm sorry for the ways that it's impacted you. I'm working on changing that, because we all need to know when enough is enough. So kind of coaching him through, like, I want you to step into the vulnerability of sharing that part of who you are, why you need it, and 2, they need it. Because it says to them, oh, it's okay to be human. And don't we want to, like, first and foremost be humans doing this work together? Like, that's a beautiful story. So, like, to teach that, another good example, technology, this is the same gentleman, checking email, texting, constantly on his work phone, well into the evening. So he's at home with his family, but he's not really at home. He's working in his mind. No boundaries around technology. So, hey team, I'm going to step into this making safety moment. He doesn't call it that, but like, this is what it is for him. I'm going to let you all know that I'm going to get a second phone. This is going to be for work only, and this one's going to be for my personal life only. I'm going to leave this phone at home because I have really bad boundaries, or at work, I have really bad boundaries around technology. And you all know it. You all know it. And if anyone else is interested in doing this with me, we can do this together and experiment together. The company will pay for it. Because I take that seriously for myself now, and I want you all to take it seriously too. So there's a few things like that, a few guidelines that go along with it. Like, there's got to be 1 or 2 people on the leadership team that has that phone number so that they can call you and say, hey, code red, we need your help. But it's a very limited. That personal phone is just for family and friends. It's just for those that you really do want around your bed someday.
But the
when you're passing
idea
away.
here with making safety, whether it's by admitting you need a second phone or it's stopping sending emails at 7:30 p.m. is what it's showing to the team that you have stuff to work on also, and by doing that,
Totally.
it's okay for them to have stuff to work on also.
Totally. Exactly. That's what it's about. Because when you show it and you demonstrate it, it allows them to do that. The last thing you want is a group of people who are following you, but they're not bringing their full self. They're not bringing their best self. They're also living in their own kind of isolated bubble, self-preserving, somewhat anxious and fearful themselves about their own performance, insecure. You want them to feel safe, connected, confident in what they bring to the table, capable of like saying, here's what I'm not good at. Can I get some help? Or I just made a mistake. I'm sorry. Like, I need to own that. And how can I learn from it? Like, you want those kinds of team members. Because if they are, they're going to stay with you a long time. Right?
Have you reflected on the balance there on the leaders front? So here's the question.
Great question.
One is I'm totally measured and controlled and polished, and I don't let any of this stuff out. The other is I'm probably oversharing here. I'm actually making it too safe, right?
Totally.
Here's like
and it's not too safe.
Here's actually like 4 things that I'm working on, and low key it's actually 6, and you all know it. And now everyone's going, is this person competent? Like why is he the leader then if there's this much stuff going on? So that's a tricky question. That's a tightrope walk, because on one end you alienate your people and it's cold in the building and people don't trust you, like your client you were referencing earlier. On the other end of the spectrum, it's basically a standard slipping situation where it becomes a bit too much of a free for all. It's a bit too feely, too touchy feely, and not results focused enough. So I'm being long winded, but how do we kind of really nail the balance there?
Yeah, it's too touchy-feely, and another way of saying that is it got really awkward, right? And part of the reason those moments happen is the leader hasn't spent enough time within themselves and with someone or someone's outside of that moment to really examine that before they bring it for the first time to their team, or it's just been unexamined and I'm opening these up in front of everybody and it just does not feel like, I mean, we all know it in our guts. Like that was too much. You crossed a line.
Right.
We know it, right? And so for the leader, you need to have a place outside of these circles where you're most visible in your leadership to process these things, to understand what your growth edges are,
right?
What it really means for you to press into those. And then when you bring it to your team to make safety, there's the message is like, oh, this guy's taking this really seriously. And he's like doing something about it. He spent some time thinking about it.
Right.
Like, I respect that.
Right.
I want to be about that myself.
That's different than processing out loud for the first time in team huddle.
Right. When you're having like a breakdown or you're just like losing it or the anxiety is like spilling out and you're just like an absolute mess and disaster and you're like, I got to do something about this.
Yeah.
Like that's oversharing. That's too much. You need some boundaries around that. You need some care around that. Preferably someone that's professional enough to help you with that.
But making safety, showing your humanness is inevitably a good thing for the cohesion of the team, the longevity of the employee, the trust level between people on it, all that stuff. Can you talk more broadly here as we come to a close about like the benefits that you see leaders start to enjoy as they do this work? I mean, both on the business front and then both on the personal front. Talk about the newfound joy that they were robbed of before, the lifestyle improvements, the relational stuff, what have you.
The two benefits that I think just surface, and it's not instant. It takes some time. I've seen this, I'm applying it here. There's this gradual story of transformation that's happening consistently or gradually over time. They begin to really enjoy their life more. It might get a little worse before they get there because they're having to make some hard choices and step into the conflict and tension and the awkward vulnerableness of it all. But they begin to enjoy their life more and the story they're creating. They can breathe a little easier. I got an email just last week, from a client. I stepped into my week and I felt light. I felt lighter, like I was ready for the week, ready for what's in front of me. This is someone who literally described the chaos inside him as the boogeyman that was out to get him the moment he woke up. Like, so to say something like that, like, that's no small thing.
Right.
That's the mark of really good work that he's done to change his story.
Yeah.
Right. So learning to, like, I enjoy the person I'm becoming. I'm enjoying what it means to be in my body, my mind. I'm feeling my life more. I'm connected more in an integrated body, mind, heart kind of way. I'm not just a mind solving problems in this business, acting like a machine. I'm a whole human being, and that has very tangible elements to it. My spouse likes me more. We actually had an evening that was like delightful. I learned how to shut it off and actually be home with my kids. I played. Like, any number of metrics like that, I think for you as the individual are a beautiful thing. Or here's another one, like, I was able to say yes to the right thing, and it wasn't rooted in reactive energy. I said yes because it aligned with who I am and what I know this business is about. And that meant I had to say no. And I had a hard conversation at that team meeting, and it was a beautiful thing. Like, these kinds of things, they begin to emerge, right? You start creating and writing the story you want. You become the person that you want to become. And then the second piece is people around you, the team, your closer relationships, like, they sense that seeps into them as well. That's how we are created as human beings. We regulate each other in that way. Our nervous systems respond to each other in that way. If you're more like, if the guy in charge or the gal in charge, if your pilot came on the PA and was like, I'm freaking out here. I know, like, you probably don't want to hear that right now, but the engines just got hit by birds. It's never happened to me before. I'm not sure what to do. So I'll get back to you when I figure it out. Like, you want, hey, this happened. We're okay. We're going to be diverting over here. Like, you want to hear that calm reassurance, because that helps our bodies also feel calm and reassured. And then, man, like, I trust you. I feel like we can lean into this hard thing, this day, this month, this plan, this idea together. That's a beautiful thing. And I think that actually, if someone did the math, you could measure it, because after a while, there's a window of tolerance. I can't take this anymore. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm going to another ship where that leader looks like they can handle this a little bit better. I can't do this anymore, right? This happens all the time, and we know it costs a lot of money to find the person, train the person, all of that's just so much energy, so much money and resource that goes into that. What if we create stories that people just want to stay in?
Mm-hmm. Ourself included, because sometimes because sometimes it's not the employee that leaves; it's the entrepreneur that just goes, "I got to jettison all of this, and I'm just going to blow up my life here and recreate it over there." Button. Yeah, totally.
That's right. Yeah. Right, and that's not a good story. Beautiful story is we're all in this together. I see you, you see me. We're building this together. We're celebrating the wins. We're suffering the losses together, but we're on this ship together, and that's a beautiful thing.
Jon, we gotta wrap this up, but where do people get in touch with you? Where do they follow along? Where are you located on cyberspace?
At our website, inaliminalspace.org. That's where you can find us. You can email me to jon@inaliminalspace.org. Liminal is spelled Liminal. We didn't even talk about that word. It's a cool word. It literally translates threshold from the Latin. So that space where there's waiting and not knowing, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of, like, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's a beautiful place to show up into and, like, really bring to bear our where are we being invited to step into at that threshold.
Yeah. And like you take him in here and just describe, like, the type of people you work with and what you work with them on. I mean, we've kind of danced around this the whole conversation, but just very explicitly, like, what are you up to there?
My primary work is with business leaders, entrepreneurs, managers, and their teams as well. So there's individual work and teamwork. And a lot of it has to do with leading through change, who they're becoming in the story they find themselves in. That has a lot of chaos externally and internally. So personal and professional development within the context of whatever business it is that they own and run. or lead within. So that's the bulk of the work that I do. And so there's individual work, team work, we do retreats, that kind of multifaceted conversation that takes place in a really fun way when you can step into a longer period of time, like on a retreat.
Yeah. Awesome. We will link all that stuff below in the description. You can check that out. And dude, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and prepping for this and having this conversation. Thanks for being here, Jon.
Yeah, thank you, Benji. So fun. Appreciate the time.
We'll do it again soon. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.